Good evening and welcome to APTA Live. Thank you for joining us this evening for this second in a three-part series on healthcare leadership and how physical therapists can engage in leadership and how they can prepare for a career in leadership. We've been fortunate to partner with the American College of Healthcare Executives and really to investigate and explore physical therapists and leadership role. Our first webinar featured two CEOs, one from a large inpatient rehab hospital in Houston and one from a community hospital in Iowa, to talk about their path to healthcare leadership in their organizations and what they found unique about their physical therapists, their training as a physical therapist, and where their gaps were and what they needed to really become a healthcare leader. Tonight, we're going to dig a little bit deeper and talk to two outstanding leaders in the profession, Nicole Wilson from Indianapolis and Burke Wilson from Houston, Texas. Tonight's panel is going to be moderated by Anita Haverson, and I'll do more formal introductions of our three panel participants in a few minutes. One of the reasons APTA engaged in this work was we began to hear about physical therapists who were really aspiring to become or were already healthcare leaders in health systems, hospitals, skilled nursing facilities, and private practices. APTA sought to really, how do we support these leaders outside of their normal clinical roles? And at first we were looking at, do we develop a leadership program? There were a lot of leadership programs that were in physical therapy, from education leadership to private practice leadership. And when we really started looking at what it would take to become a leader in healthcare systems, we found a partner in the American College of Healthcare Executives and their program that takes individuals through an established course of study toward a fellowship in that organization. So instead of standing up our own program, we began to partner with ACHE on developing this out and really connecting physical therapists to the larger healthcare community and to other leaders in physical therapy and outside of physical therapy. This year, we launched two initiatives with ACHE. The first was we did in celebration of our centennial, we offered a discounted membership in ACHE for 100 of APTA members. And we have over 65 individuals who have taken advantage of that to date and have really begun to link in and partner with their professional community of APTA for physical therapy and their community of leaders through ACHE. And secondly, we sponsored an individual this year to go through the fellowship program. And that was an initiative we undertook so we would better understand, is this the right fit for APTA, and really help encourage that leader, for us to learn more from them and for them to participate and really discover, is that a great path for us to move forward in collaboration. So tonight in the second call, we're going to really just have a conversation with two of these emerging leaders or established leaders in physical therapy who have really pursued and excelled in healthcare leadership. And so tonight's panel will be moderated by Anita Haverson. Anita currently serves as the Senior Vice President of Executive Engagement at the American College of Healthcare Executives. Her role, it really serves the membership of healthcare leaders across the whole landscape of ACHE, from credentialing, chapters, diversity and inclusion, career services. She has a lot on her plate, as you will learn. But she also is one of us in the rehab community. So we're always excited. She's original and has experience. She's a speech language pathologist as well as an MBA. And so she knows our field well, has worked with us and in collaboration at a clinical level and now at a leadership level. So we're very excited for Anita to be facilitating and moderating tonight's conversation. Our next panelist is Nicole Wilson. Nicole was most recently the Vice President of Integrated Primary Care and Ancillary Services for Community Health Network in Indianapolis, Indiana. She is also board certified as a fellow in the American College of Healthcare Executives and has served in numerous leadership roles, both at the Community Health Network and throughout healthcare. She's been a community leader and somebody who's really leveraged her physical therapist training, gone on to get an MBA, and has established that fellowship in the American College of Healthcare Executives. So she has been very successful in her career. She also was in 2018 selected as part of the prestigious Thomas Dolan Executive Diversity Program at the American College of Healthcare Executives. And when I came CEO of APTA, was right at the transition of Mr. Dolan. He was the former CEO of the American College of Healthcare Executives. So he is was a well-established and recognized leader across healthcare, not just at ACHE. And so congratulations on that program, and really looking forward to learning more about that. She also has been recognized by Modern Healthcare as one of the top minority healthcare executives to watch, and has had numerous awards as well. She holds her bachelor's degree in sports medicine from DePaul University, and master's and doctorate degrees in physical therapy from the University of Indianapolis, and a master's in business administration for Purdue University. And they ruined my Iowa Hawkeyes perfect record a couple weeks ago, so we're not going to hold that against her tonight. So, and she resides in Indianapolis, Indiana. So please join me in welcoming Nicole to our panel tonight. And then we have our next panelist is Burke Wilson. Burke is the Assistant Director of Value-Based Care, Telemedicine Quality and Care Management at Texas Children's Pediatrics. Texas Children's Pediatrics is the nation's largest pediatric primary care medical group with over 600 practices and 350 physicians. Burke earned his doctorate degree from the University of Texas Southwestern in 2012 and completed a post-professional residency in sports physical therapy from Memorial Hermann Ironman Sports Medicine Institute in Houston. So you can see we have two experts in sports medicine as well as healthcare executives as well. So very interesting. The night of the World Series opening, we have two sports junkies on our line. So Burke received his master's degree in business administration with a focus on healthcare management from Creighton University in 2020. And he was awarded the college's Accredo Award for Outstanding Leadership, Academic Achievement, and inducted into the Beta Gamma Sigma Business Honor Society. Burke is presently serving as on APTA's Finance and Audit Committee, and has also served on numerous other committees, from being a delegate from the Texas delegation, as well as on our residency and fellowship board as well, with a focus on the sports medicine residencies and fellowships. So please, we are pleased to have this panel with us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anita Halverson to moderate tonight's conversation with these two leaders in physical therapy and healthcare leadership. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Justin. It is such an honor to be here tonight with Nicole and Burke. ACHE is so pleased to be in this partnership with APTA. As the professional society for healthcare leaders and executives with all sorts of different backgrounds and degrees and experiences, we're pleased to recognize and support the career trajectories of physical therapy leaders, no matter what you decide to do in healthcare. And to date, we have over 200 individuals in ACHE who have noted either a PT or an MPT or a DPT credential as part of their membership profile. I'm confident that there are actually more, because we have over 1,000 individuals who either have therapy or rehabilitation as part of their title or their organization. So I'm sure that there's some out there as well. When APTA reached out to ACHE about a year or so ago, we immediately named ways that we could ingrain physical therapy leaders throughout ACHE and really help you engage with this, your new career. So what you learn and practice in physical therapy in terms of teamwork and leadership skills, such as negotiating and influencing, matched with critical healthcare knowledge and experience in finance, in human resources, things that you learn through ACHE or in your roles, it makes a perfect fit for these two organizations to come together to support your development. As Justin noted, the APTA Live series kicked off last month with two exceptional CEOs, and I have no doubt that you will really enjoy hearing the career journeys of both Nicole Wilson and Burke Wilson this evening. So let's get going. So here's your first question to both of you. Nicole, maybe we'll start with you. How did your background and your education and your training in physical therapy set you up for success as a healthcare leader?
Good evening, and thank you, Anita, for having me, and thank you so much to the APTA and the ACC for this opportunity. You know, I think that there are so many things that we learn in PT school that are foundational to healthcare leadership. The biggest thing that comes to mind to me is problem solving. As physical therapists, we are skilled at problem solving. We're trained to thoroughly evaluate a patient's history, their signs and symptoms. We look at the results of our own tests and measures, and we devise our therapy diagnosis and creative ways to remedy that concern. And as a healthcare executive, that thought process of problem solving and decision making that I got in PT school always came to the forefront. And so that same skill set, you may be using a different set of information that you're analyzing, but it's still the same skill set. The other thing that comes to mind is that in healthcare leadership and in physical therapy, you never have a perfect set of information that you're dealing with. You're always making information and decisions without having the full picture. And that's something that we had to try something with this patient in physical therapy. And sometimes you have to do that in business. You just have to try something. You have to pull together what you think is the best solution and try it and just kind of go from there. But the biggest thing was you would never, as a physical therapist, let a patient come back in and if things were not going well, not change the plan, right? You wouldn't let them continue to suffer with pain if something wasn't working. So one of the things is that you have to detect early on when your plan isn't going well. And that is so common in healthcare leadership. If things aren't working, if you're not moving and shaking to make a difference or to change it, then you're really not being a good steward of your business. And so those foundational elements that I learned in PT school really set the stage for me to be a great healthcare executive because those foundations, they don't change. It's just a different set of information.
That's terrific. And you can see Burke and I are both nodding our heads wildly over that. So Burke, same question to you. Think about your background, your education, some experiences, your training, specifically as a physical therapist. How did that contribute to what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I think that I'm going to second what Nicole said, but I'm going to add a little bit to that. I think the third thing that I might add, if Nicole doesn't mind me attaching to her list, is that each one of us, as we move through our DPT program, are really given the skills to not know the answer to every question, but to have the skills and knowledge to go find the answer. And there's a lot of things, in my particular environment in pediatric primary care. I will say there is no technical knowledge that I learned in physical therapy school that prepared me to work in pediatric primary care. However, I was armed with the skills and resources to go out and find the information that I need in order to be successful in my role, in order to make solid decisions, and in order to partner with other people. And then the fourth thing I think I would add is this spirit of interdisciplinary collaboration. I think that many of us are taught how to work within a healthcare team in PT school, and I think that has bode well for me. I think that there's something to be said about being a clinical leader in healthcare, and there is a level of rapport that you have with other clinical leaders, whether they be physicians, whether they be nurses, whether they be other allied health professionals, other advanced practice providers, that they start to understand, okay, he or she is going to make a change in a process, or they're going to change a workflow in order to improve patient efficiency. But do they really understand me as a clinician and how it's going to affect me? And I think being a clinical leader gives you that rapport to have those conversations, to say, yes, I understand what it means to be a clinician, and I understand the downstream ramifications of the decision making that we are engaging in. And I think that is something that I learned in school that has really bode well for me in healthcare leadership.
That's really terrific. And I recognize that once a clinician, always a clinician, right?
Absolutely.
But think back. So Burke, think back to when you were transitioning from 100% clinical into a leadership role. Tell us about your first leadership role, and what did that look like, and what were your responsibilities? And hopefully you can look back fondly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you that to any emerging clinician that wants to make the move into more of a larger scale healthcare leadership role, you need to be prepared for that question because people are going to ask it. Why do you want to move out of the clinic and why do you want to move into administration? I think for me, I started out in an operational therapy role. So I applied for and assumed the role as the clinical manager of my therapy department. I think that really helped me because that was a lane that I felt like I knew well, right? I knew what impacted the clinicians. I knew what problems were out there. I was able to articulate that in kind of an interview process and then start to offer solutions to move the department forward. I think from there, thankfully, I kind of grew up, I would say, in a community hospital. And so I got the opportunity to gain exposure to the inpatient world, to the ED, the urgent care. And I started raising my hand to take on additional projects in areas of the hospital or the healthcare system that I was not as familiar with. So I won't spoil one of your questions as we move forward, but I think that taking those opportunities and raising your hand starts to provide more clarity of how the world of physical therapy fits in the larger kind of ecosystem of healthcare and how you as a leader can start to fit into that larger ecosystem and contribute in a meaningful way to that ecosystem in roles outside of pure clinical, therapy related operational roles.
Terrific. I'm eager to hear Nicole's story of transitioning from a clinician, and I mean like 100%, clinical, into more administrative responsibilities. What did that look like for you?
So I really think that even before I got the title of manager, which was my first role, I was focused on being the best clinician that I could be. And through that, even in other organizations in high school, I always found myself in a leadership role, even when I wasn't seeking one. So I feel like as a clinician, you are a leader. You lead students, you lead patients, you lead your coworkers, you're an influencer, and that naturally kind of comes out. And when opportunities present itself, if you have been doing what you're supposed to be doing as a clinician, then the transition is a little bit easier. And that's what happened with me. So because I was a clinical leader, when actually the first position I applied for, I didn't get. But the second time around, I applied again. And my coworkers were like, you need to be the one. You need to apply again. We are rooting for you. We think you should have this role. You would be great at this role. And that was really a great feeling that your peers felt like, hey, you need to do this. Now, it did put me in the position where I'm going to be leading my peers. And that's a different dynamic because a lot of times they feel like you'll be rooting for them or supporting them on every single decision. And so with that dynamic, I decided to have conversations early with my peers and my friends to set expectations. And I really counted on them. And I said, hey, you guys rooted for me to be in this position. Let's make this successful together. But setting expectations, that means that sometimes I can't always side with what you want to do. I have to think about what's best for the clinic. And that was the voice of reason that I provided as a clinician and perspective that I gave from time to time, which helped people gravitate towards me. So it is a little bit of a dynamic if you are coming from a situation where you are peers with people and then you move into a leadership role over them. And my suggestion would be make sure that you have conversations early, find out who your supporters are, set expectations, make sure that you bring in, there's always a front office, back office dynamic, that you squash that early so that you can be as successful as possible. And if people are cheering for you because you've been a good clinical leader, bring them to the table with your leadership and say, hey, help me make this successful. You wanted me here, so let's do this.
That's really great. It's always fun to think about those transitional years and positions that you're in. And Nicole, I really liked what you said about being the best at what you were currently doing. I mean, I hear that now in hospital and health system development roles of, like, how did you climb the ladder, so to speak? I was the best at what I possibly could be in what I was doing. And then the next thing came. So I think that's really wise thoughts. So I'm going to turn the tables a little bit. Burke, let's start with you. Think about what skills you're missing, actually. So you come into this leadership role, you've developed and grown over time. What did you figure out that you needed to learn more about, or specific areas? And then how did you go about filling those gaps?
Yeah, so I think that this is where my tie to ACHE comes in, because I think after being in a clinical leadership role for a couple of years, I started to, gain exposure to additional or different positions outside of therapy specific work. And that's when I started to get involved in ACHE. And I'll tell you, one of the things, the best thing that I did was I found a mentor within ACHE. And that mentor, in probably 1 to 2 meetings, him and I began to hash out what the path forward could look like over the next 5 years of my career. And I think that was an important exercise for me because I was able to identify short and long-term goals. But the key was identifying gaps in knowledge. And so to your point, I think there was about 4 gaps in knowledge that I really wanted to focus on. So that was financial acumen. That was information technology and support. That was law, healthcare law and regulations, and then compliance, which were kind of part of my job as an operational therapy leader, but not the complete part of my job. And so we started trying to identify ways that I could help fill that gap, whether it be additional opportunities within my current health system, just kind of raising my hand and volunteering to work on projects that would gain exposure into those areas, but also through continuing education through ACHE and then an MBA program. And I think that that's when I made the decision to go back and get my MBA. And that decision was not made lightly. I was out of school. I had achieved a doctorate level degree. I had a wife and kids, and that was a very difficult decision for me because I knew it would require some sacrifice. But after evaluating it, felt like that was the best way for me to kind of intensively kind of capture some of those skills that I needed to really hone in on if I was going to move into a different position. And I'll tell you that is actually how the position transformed. So through a quality improvement project that I was tasked with in my MBA program, that's where I ended up meeting my now boss for the very first time. And he got to see my work on that project. And so sometimes that's how these opportunities actually present themselves. They're not necessarily this posted opportunity that you go searching for on a website, but it's you're continuing to do your job, you're doing it well. And as Nicole said, you look up and there's an opportunity that you have to kind of take advantage of in front of you.
That's amazing. And you never know who's listening along the way. So that, that's another really key piece of advice. Nicole, same question to you. Now, it's interesting. Burke named several of the leadership competency areas of that ACHE has done research around from a competency standpoint for healthcare executives. I'm curious to know if those were some of the same gap areas, or if you're willing to admit, and how you overcame those gaps.
They were. As you went down your list, I said, oh, yes, I have that as well. I think one of the aha moments for me was I realized I've got to get some experience and knowledge base around the world wherever physicians are and providers, because the crossover from leading physical therapists to then jumping into a product line without having experience managing and leading physicians was one barrier that was just a part of my leadership journey. And so when our CEO wanted to build a sports medicine program, and he wanted me to corral physicians around that and build a program to take over the market, I was absolutely, excited about the opportunity, because it was my first time outside of leading physical therapists that I could lead physicians and have a physician dyad partner alongside me. And so relative to the things that Burke said, I had financial acumen, economic models, legislation, reimbursement, compensation, legal concerns, compliance, but all in the realm of a physician and a provider from that standpoint, because most of your traditional healthcare systems do revolve around physicians. Okay. So that was kind of the aha moment for me. Now, for me to kind of close that gap, I really got involved with ACHE. I happened to have the opportunity to be involved with a special program called the Thomas C. Dolan program that I was selected for, and got to do a lot of continuing education where I could close those specific gaps. And then I pursued the fellowship. Once I got in and thought, oh my gosh, there's so much more, and not necessarily skills, I would say, but knowledge base and in-depth knowledge base across the entire health system. Because I kind of was in my own world thinking, oh, physical therapy is everything, but then there's so much more. It is a great piece of the puzzle, but the puzzle is so much bigger. But pursuing the fellowship and doing all of the coursework and CEUs around that to gain that credential really helped close the gaps for me.
That's really terrific. And so just I'll talk a little bit about that credential and that the FACHE credential. So many clinicians, they tell us that the FACHE credential puts them on an even playing field with other administrators, with other clinicians, people in decision-making executive roles. So the FACHE credential signifies board certification in healthcare management. It's the only credential like it available. So being a fellow in the American College of Healthcare Executives, it brings continuous value to you personally as a leader, to your organization certainly, and also to your community. It's highly respected. It's highly respected amongst your peers and also across our healthcare industry. And it really signifies a deep understanding of healthcare knowledge areas and experience. And the exam that is part of this to become a fellow is testing not only knowledge in the areas of healthcare law, regulations, board governance, for instance, but also it's really drawing upon your experience and ability to make decisions across at a national level. So it really it is developed by fellows and helps to really heighten the level of competency for healthcare executives. And you need to recertify every 3 years. And this really demonstrates that you have a recommitment over and over again to maintain that high competency level that healthcare really needs from you. So there's 9,000 fellows, and the community of 9,000 fellows that we have is collaborative, and supportive. It's a valued source for personal and professional relationships. There are 6 different criteria to become an FACHE within ACHE. I won't go through those now, but you can find all of those on ache.org. We also have advancement information sessions that we hold every other month, and those recordings can be found on ache.org as well. And I'm pleased that Nicole has become one. I have confidence that we'll see those letters behind Burke's name very soon. Let's get back to our questions.
Absolutely.
So, Burke, to you. There are healthcare leaders with us today. There are aspiring healthcare leaders just hoping that and building themselves to advance in their careers. What would you say from a gaining experience perspective? You said raise your hand, and but what does that look like? And is there anything maybe outside of healthcare leadership or a healthcare organization that you also could become involved with that would help develop some of those skills?
Absolutely. I think that any experience either within your own organization or potentially through the associations, professional associations that you are a part of is is extremely helpful. I think I would start by really encouraging those that are kind of initiating this journey to really lock arms with a mentor that can really help kind of walk you through and guide you, that's outside of your organization. I found that has been very important in my professional journey. And so I think that's one thing that I wanted to point out. But I think that if we go back to kind of opportunities within your own organization, I think, if you work in a large health system, I think those opportunities are plentiful. I mean, I think it requires you going to have conversations with leaders, maybe 2, maybe 3 levels above you, carving out 10 or 15 minutes of their time and just saying, hey, do you mind if I chat with you about some things that I've been thinking about, and explain where you want to go. I think that's one of the things that you've got to be able to do, is to kind of cast a vision. That doesn't mean that you have to know the exact title of the exact endpoint that you're working towards, but it does mean like, okay, I have, aspirations to, lead a team outside of the world of physical therapy. Can you help me with these opportunities? I think having those conversations with kind of executive leaders or senior level leaders starts to kind of remember you in the back of their mind whenever they are thinking, hey, I need a project manager for a project. I need someone to help participate in this quality improvement initiative. Who can I call on? Oh, I remember I had a conversation with Burke a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago, and he's wanting to do something a little bit outside of therapy. And then I think that takes, you've got to produce results with that, right? So I think one of the things that I would encourage any therapist or any aspiring leader is to really think about, how do I add value to my organization? I think Nicole touched on this very early on when she talked about essentially adding value within her own therapy team. And I think that, I don't think you can necessarily just walk in with an educational degree and just say, hey, I'm here, give me a role. I think that it takes, kind of proven results over time. And then finally, I think what I would encourage folks to do is look for opportunities to get involved in committees in service, either within ACHE, within APTA. I can say that maybe there's not a direct one-to-one correlation on my involvement in APTA and what I'm doing now, but it starts to develop a skill set that then you can have conversations with folks. It also starts to expand your network. And so you can continue to have these kind of vision casting conversations with people within your network. And then those connections start to kind of come together because you start to become top of mind as, people are making these hiring decisions or opportunities start to develop. So I would say within your organization, find opportunities, and then also in your professional association.
I really, I'm so glad that you mentioned networks and developing networks as well too. Sometimes people think, I don't need to talk to anyone in Massachusetts. I don't ever want to live, no offense to Massachusetts, I don't ever want to live there, but that's not the point. I mean, the point is, you get to hear another person's career journey, and now you have another person that you can call when you have a problem and you're looking for a new solution, and then they can contact you and you can share really neat things that too. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. And also, perfect example of that a potential gap area early on was finance. And look, you sit on the finance board of APTA, or I might not have that quite right, but that's how you contribute and how you grow. Mm-hmm. And Nicole, I think of you, so passing the baton to you of you're on a number of other boards that are outside of your direct level of responsibility and your work with community. So Talk about that and your involvement with other organizations, like other outside boards that you've been a part of, and how that's helped you develop these leadership skills.
Yeah, I mean, a perfect example is right now, and where I'm at right now. I'm not in Indianapolis. I'm in Atlanta. I am here for the Leading Age Conference as a part of a board that I sit on for a retirement community. And I take every opportunity for something new and unfamiliar as a learning opportunity. And so I've taken advantage of so many different courses that have ties to healthcare, but also ties to other things. And then I think, how can I apply this to healthcare? How can I apply learning about how to make an assessment on whether we build a new facility for those who are retired, and what decision process are we going through, and how can I apply that to healthcare? I really think that anytime that you're out in the community, you're doing good, you're sitting on boards, and you have the opportunity to learn something different, it will help you be a better leader and bring a different perspective to the table when it comes to healthcare. And even when, Burke, you mentioned getting on different projects that span across the organization, one thing that I would encourage you to do is, yes, raise your hand, be there, but position yourself and ask to be appointed to something that is not the typical. So I would always raise my hand to be on these committees. And they're like, oh yeah, the rehab function of this cross committee, you'll lead. And I'm like, hey, can I try the finance committee, or can I be on, the nursing committee? And make sure that you use that time wisely, because if you don't ask to be assigned to something different, you're only reinforcing the knowledge that you know versus taking advantage of the opportunity to learn about how nursing works and the different dynamics that they bring to the table, or the finance committee and the finance projects. So don't pigeonhole yourself in the fact of raising your hand. And the other thing that I always like to do, which kind of goes back to your question earlier, or your comment about different boards, be sure in your journey that you're taking the time to learn about the trends that are going on across multiple industries. If everyone is digitizing and going to virtual or going to apps, then, well, as a healthcare leader, you need to know that, and you need to be pushing for that within your organization as a healthcare leader to say, hey, are we looking at this? Have we seen what's going on out from this particular trend or that particular trend, and bring that to the table of healthcare? Sometimes I found that healthcare, we can be a little behind on some of the changes that are going on from a digital perspective, from a lead generation, conversion, all of these things that I've learned. At Community, I got the opportunity to be in a unique role called Vice President of Health for a portion of my time. And my organization really realized that sometimes in healthcare, we get in our own way. And they took a certain set of what we call shoppable services and put them to the side, took them outside of the product line structure, and said, hey, we need someone to accelerate this on the digital front. We need someone to accelerate this on the consumerism front and the principles related to retail. And they kind of put us to the side. And so I got to be a part of a team where I learned so much, but I learned in that role from tracking and trending and what's going on in other industries and applying it to healthcare. So I became kind of one of the go-to people when it came to consumerism and retail. And I was certainly not, if you look across the country, not the spokesperson on that stuff, but because I had taken the initiative and said, hey, I'll do it, and learned something different and applied it, I became kind of the local person to know in that area. So just think about those things and make sure you're not inadvertently pigeonholing yourself.
Mm-hmm. Gee, the advice is amazing tonight. Thank you so much. Burke, so you decided to go back to school, and actually all three of us having MBAs. That it's a big decision, and surely it demonstrates your commitment to lifelong learning. But talk about that a little bit. How obviously that's a personal commitment for you, but from a healthcare executive perspective, how important is it to continuously learn?
Well, I think it's vitally important, and I think as physical therapists, we are not. I wouldn't say that's not anything new to us, right? I think that many of us at the top of our clinical fields are committed to lifelong learning, and I think that 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 track or that process is going to be very individualized. I often got the question after I finished up my MBA, how did you know when to go back to get your MBA? I would say that's an individual decision, right? And it has multiple different factors that are influencing it. It could be stage of life. It could be kind of financial capabilities at the time. It could be demands on your work. And a mentor gave me some really sound advice very early on in my career. He told me, Burke, don't be afraid to let your career ebb and flow. And what that means is you don't have to have your foot on the career gas pedal going 100 miles an hour, like all the time. And because I think, honestly, you're going to burn out. And so that gave me a lot of freedom as someone who's a little bit of a type A personality that likes to accomplish, that likes to, kind of check boxes, is to find time to let your career ebb and flow. And I found a time in my career where I felt like that I was in a spot, and I was in a really good spot to have enough knowledge of of how healthcare works outside of therapy, but enough kind of theoretical knowledge to start an MBA program, to kind of get it started. And that's when I entered. And throughout that program, I got to kind of see my education become what I called Monday morning relevant, which means like you kind of learn things throughout the weekend, because I was in an executive program, and I could immediately apply it to what I was doing on my job on Monday morning. And I think for me, that was the program that suited me best, and one that gave me the most benefit. But I'll tell you that my journey didn't stop at graduation. I think that I was, consistently looking ahead to, okay, how do I continue to get better? How do I continue to find those gaps? And I think that I've done that through pursuit of the FACHE credential. Lord willing, I will have that credential in November. So everybody send up some good word for me passing my test. But I think that is a commitment in and of itself. Mm-hmm. And then most recently, I got the opportunity to enter ACHE's executive program. And again, that's an opportunity was an opportunity for me to interact with rising executives and those that are wanting to pursue those type of roles within healthcare organizations. And again, those discussions and that curriculum happened at a little bit more of an elevated level, because you continue to be more informed about, kind of what's going on at a policy level, what's going on at a macro level that's influencing healthcare. And then how do I take all that information, kind of bring it down and then apply it to my organization at the micro level, or kind of at the institutional level. And so I'm not sure what my next adventure will be, but again, this is a time where I think my career is ebbing a little bit. And so taking a step back, seeing what opportunities are there, and continuing to learn.
Well, I can't wait to follow your career, that for sure. And Nicole, I'm thinking about there's learning and then there's teaching. So tell me about how, I'm confident that you have been a mentor to others, and that, you have grown other leaders as you have grown yourself. Can you talk about what that's looked like?
Sure. And that's one of my favorite parts of my job. And I realized that I was fortunate in my organization. People just started emailing me saying, hey, can you be my mentor? Can we sit down and have these coffees? And I remember being in that position where I would email people and speak up and say, hey, can I have 15 minutes with you? And I thought, man, I'm either getting old or people think that I know what I'm doing. So, but to me, everything is about relationships, and really getting in front of people, learning where their heart is, learning where they want to be, really making sure that they understand the steps that they need to get there in order to be successful, and just really doing my best to evaluate their situation, where they want to be, and give as best advice from the heart that I can. Sometimes that means being very honest. I believe in having a very transparent and relationship with my mentees. And sometimes if they're not, well positioned or not meeting the mark, then it's my responsibility to say, hey, there's a few areas that I've noticed that you weren't as sharp on, and these are the things that may not reflect as well within the organization. And sometimes it's tweaking someone who's already halfway there. They just need the confidence to know that they can do it. And sometimes it's giving people a shot. I remember just feeling empowered when I got into many of the director or vice president roles, thinking I can hire somebody. I have hiring decision and hiring authority, and I can give someone a shot who has potential. You don't have to have all of the boxes checked, but if you're assertive, if you've reached out, if you've shown in other areas, then I feel like a part of my responsibility as a mentor is to give people that opportunity to show what they're made of. And when you give someone with potential that opportunity that they felt like they didn't have a shot at, they always deliver. They'll never forget that. They'll never forget that you gave them an opportunity to shine in an area that they felt like they couldn't get their foot.
And then they'll pay it forward later on in their career to someone else. I mean, that's just how this works. It's amazing. Please.
No, I like to be hands-on with mentorship because I really think that it's the best way to help build that next generation of leaders. I've been very active with female leaders and with people of color as well, to make sure that they find their voice within our healthcare leadership.
I am confident that you have inspired hundreds of listeners this evening with your stories and your career journeys. I mean, let's just social media applause for Nicole and Burke for sharing so very much. Nicole, I think about you talk about being intentional and raise your hand and really think about, and so to be really intentional with your actions. And Burke, you talked a lot about the importance of mentors, Nicole as well, but it sounds like that was really instrumental and has been and will continue to be, as you are a mentor to others, I am confident. Also, you too talked about raising your hand and kind of making your own pathway, even if you don't know what that end game is. It's okay to not know what that last role in your career will be, but to really enjoy the journey along the way and always to keep paying it forward. So think, both of you, of some kind of parting words to those who are listening, both existing, current healthcare leaders who have the physical therapy background, incredibly fortunate to have clinical years under their belt, as well as those who are aspiring to be healthcare leaders and are just walking away with a sense of excitement from tonight. What are some parting words of advice for them? Nicole, you want to start?
Sure. If I could say anything, I would certainly say, don't be afraid to take risks. Don't be afraid to advocate for yourself. Don't be afraid to raise your hand. Don't let your career and your journey happen to you. Be an active participant in that and bring along allies and people who know that you have it in you to do well. You don't have to know everything and have every box checked to take that first step. But certainly you have to believe in yourself, and you have to know that you are on this journey. And I always think about, is the next opportunity that I'm going to take, whether it be a committee assignment, whether it be something in the community that I'm doing, is that going to position me to be closer to where I want to be or further away from where I want to be? Is that going to expand my current knowledge base, or is it going to reinforce the knowledge base that I already have? And I think about those decisions with everything that I do, like including the board that I'm on now. I didn't know much about that, but it's an opportunity for me to expand my knowledge base that is paying dividends. So don't be afraid to stretch out there and learn new and do well. You'll definitely do well.
Thank you so much. Burke, your last thoughts.
Well, Nicole, it has been a pleasure serving on this panel with you. I think I was sitting here learning some things from you as well. And so I think that I will piggyback on one of the things that you that really struck me is intentionality. And I did that early on through basically kind of a definition of my values as a person, my personal definition of leadership, and then my short and long-term goals. I was the person coming out of PT school that did everything and signed up for everything. And I think that while that sounds exciting and that sounds like that is a great way to move forward, it began to become a road that was untenable for me. And thankfully, I had mentors in my life that really spoke into me and said, hey, you cannot burn this candle at both ends for your entire life. And so I think that really, kind of defining who I am, my values, and my core beliefs, my leadership definition, how do I define leadership, and then my short and long-term goals. I was able to start evaluating opportunities that like you mentioned, Nicole, evaluating opportunities, whether they be professional, whether they be community service, whether they be personal decisions, in light of what I had already lined out. Like, is this what I'm about to say yes to? In order for me to say yes, is it going to help me kind of continue to move the ball forward in this direction that I have already kind of prescribed for myself or lined out myself? And so I would encourage anybody on this call, if you are looking at leadership in healthcare, is to define that for yourself. That is a great exercise to think through, and then start to make decisions with intentionality off of that, without compromising your values as a person along the way.
Boy, knowing these individuals are involved with both of our professional societies, APTA and ACHE, this is exactly what we dreamed about when we started to have these conversations. Physical therapists as healthcare leaders, it's clearly happening, and very, very well. You are exceptional people, exceptional leaders. To have the gift of really being on your leadership teams would be amazing. So the lucky people that you get to work with every day and in the future. I can't wait to hear what happens with the rest of your careers. And certainly also can't wait to hear what happens with the people on this call and to see where everyone goes in the future. Justin, I want to say a very special thank you to you and your amazing team at APTA. At the national office, you've been such a pleasure to start this partnership with, and I can't wait to bring this energy also local through our state associations and our local ACHE chapters as well. Thank you for having us.
Well, thank you so much, Anita, for hosting tonight and the partnership with ACHE, and to Nicole and Burke for such insightful and inspiring comments tonight. I hope many of you on the listening tonight, either live or hearing the recording, will be inspired by what you heard and really seek to find your own leadership path. And that's really what this was about. When we started this journey, it was in some ways I'll admit was part for my own learning. I wanted to find and connect with other leaders who took their physical therapy degree and applied it to the healthcare setting they were in. And so I'm always a big fan of leading where you're at, and whether that's in your home, in your community, or in your place of work. And as you can see, getting to meet individuals like Nicole, Burke, and Anita, the rehab professionals are well suited for leadership and can really make a difference on healthcare. My summary tonight is I learned, my high five is what I was going to call it. It's I learned 5 key things. First is raise your hand. There are so many opportunities. All of us are part of organizations, whether it's ACHE, whether it's locally with Leading Age, or in your hospitals or health systems. We need volunteers and people to learn and to help us row the boat forward. And so please raise your hand. That was message 1. Don't be scared to expand your horizons and expand your knowledge. So I thought, there's a point earlier, and I think it was from Nicole, that's really look for new experiences. And, I didn't get a leadership opportunity at a point in my career, and I realized very quickly that I had some knowledge gaps. And so seeking out to expand those and address those is always a great piece of advice for a leadership journey. Third, bring others along the way. A concept I just have been beginning to learn in my leadership journey is the importance of sponsorship. And how do you work with people to really help them? I can think back, and when I think about my leadership journey, there were people I didn't know were sponsoring me. And they weren't formal mentors or coaches, but they took that extra 15 minutes to take the meeting. They took that extra effort to say, you should think about this. And so doing that to others is key. And so bring others along the way. Find partners, whether those are mentors, colleagues, supporters. I thought Nicole had that at the front, like those who encourage you to lead, make sure they join you in that leadership journey as well. So that is key. And then go with the flow. Burke, I can tell you, leadership is not a linear journey, and you are much more articulate about it. It's a roller coaster, and so it's I feel like sometimes we got to raise our hand, and then so going with the flow is important. So as we close tonight, if you guys on social media, please share this. We want to build a community around leadership in this profession. We want to have an impact on healthcare. You can always reach out to me at justinmoore@apta.org, and I can share the panelists' contact information as they're comfortable, and we can connect you with really where you want to lead in your health systems and really help you find your path in leadership. So thank you, and feel free to definitely reach out to us on that. So in closing, this was a great way to sort of wrap up PT month. We're in the final quarter of our centennial year, and this was a fabulous panel to really do that. And so thank you for that. As I said, you've heard from 3 leaders in rehab, and I'm really excited about what this profession and the impact we can have across healthcare. We believe physical therapists will change the health of society, and we'll do that not only through our clinical care and our service to patients, but also through leadership. And the partnership that we've just begun with the ACHE is just one small part, but a very important part to really connection and collaboration and really helping our professional body grow and evolve across healthcare. So thank you for that. So in closing tonight, once again, round of applause to Nicole, Burke, and Anita. Thank you for an engaging and inspiring evening. We'll be back on the last Tuesday of November with our final in the 3-part series. And so please mark that on your calendar at 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll be announcing the final participants in the next couple days or week. And so stay tuned. And we look forward to having you for the 3rd part of this leadership conversation. And then also, if you're interested in the partnership we do have with ACHE, please reach out to us at APTA. Again, justinmoore@apta.org, and we can help connect you with some of the programs and services that we're offering to really help PTs become part of that community as well. So have a wonderful fall and a happy Halloween here in a few days. So thank you for joining us.